A maternity hospital shelled by Russian soldiers. Families ed as they sheltered in an historic theater. Tens of thousands of people running out of food and water. The siege of Mariupol has been one of the worst humanitarian catastrophes in Ukraine after Russia invaded the country on February 24. Ukrainian officials say at least 20,000 civilians were there by Russian forces employing tactics of mass destruction used in earlier campaigns in Syria and Chechnya. Graves of local residents, who during the fighting with Russia are seen behind homes in Mariupol. Mariupol has been destroyed, there are tens of thousands of, but even despite this, the Russians are not stopping their offensive, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in a video address this week. It has become the site of some of the war's most brutal assaults and alleged war crimes. If Russia has truly captured Mariupol, as it says it has, it would be the first major city to fall since the invasion began. M to mute, left and right arrows to seek, up and down arrows for volume. Watch 46 seconds 46s drone videos show the aftermath of Russia's assault on Mariupol. Why does Russia want Mariupol? Located in southeastern Ukraine, less than 60 kilometers from the Russian border, Mariupol has been under siege for almost 2 months. Home to more than 400,000 people before the war, it is the biggest Ukrainian city on the Sea of Azov and the main port serving the industries and agriculture of eastern Ukraine. It is also the site of some of Ukraine's biggest metals plants. Experts say Russian troops have committed war crimes in Mariupol. Control of Mariupol would provide a strategically important path between Crimea and the pro-Russian Donetsk and Luhansk regions, all territories now controlled by Moscow. It would unite Russian forces on 2 of the main axes of the invasion and free them up to join an expected new offensive against the main Ukrainian force in the east. Has it been captured? Street battles are ongoing in Mariupol as Ukraine tries to break Russia's siege of the city, according to Ukraine's Defense Ministry spokesman Oleksandr Matuzyanik. The situation in Mariupol is difficult and hard. Fighting is happening right now. The Russian army is constantly calling on additional units to storm the city, he said. But as of now, the Russians haven't managed to completely capture it. Mariupol residents lack basic necessities like food and water. He said for the first time since the start of its invasion, Russia used long-range ERs to attack the port city on Friday. Moscow says it hopes to seize all of Mariupol soon. Russia's defense ministry said it had captured the Ilyich steel works in Mariupol, but the report could not be confirmed, and Mr. Matuzyanik said active fighting was taking place around the factory. Ukrainian defenders are mainly believed to be holding out in Azovstal, another huge steel works. Both plants are owned by Medinvest, the empire of Ukraine's richest businessman and backbone of Ukraine's industrial east, which said it would never let its enterprises operate under Russian occupation. Earlier this week, Russia claimed it had captured the city's port and that more than 1,000 Ukrainian Marines had surrendered, although Ukraine has not confirmed that. An assessment by the US-based Institute for the Study of War said while Russia had continued to gain ground in Mariupol, Russian claims of a mass Ukrainian surrender are likely false. Earlier in the week, a post on the Ukrainian Marine Brigade's Facebook page said the unit was preparing for its final battle in Mariupol, as its troops had run out of ammunition. The Kremlin says Ukrainian troops have surrendered en masse in Mariupol. Today will probably be the ultimate battle, as there is no ammo left, said the post on Monday. Beyond that, hand-to-hand fighting. Beyond that, for some, for others capture. Some Ukrainian officials said the post may have been fake, and that troops were still holding out. Prominent among the Ukrainian forces that have defended Mariupol is the Azov Regiment, a militia with far-right origins incorporated into Ukraine's National Guard. Russia has portrayed destroying that group as one of its main war aims. Capturing Mariupol holds strategic significance for Russia. Claiming its first big prize in eastern Ukraine could also give Russia a stronger position to negotiate at any peace talks. Bodies carpeted through the streets. Ukrainian officials have said around a third of Mariupol's population escaped before the siege. A similar number got out during it, while around 120,000 were trapped inside. They sheltered for weeks in cellars with no power or heat, or access to outside shipments of food, water or medicine. UNESCO says dozens of cultural sites have been damaged. Daily attempts to send convoys to bring in aid and evacuate civilians failed throughout the siege, with Ukraine blaming Russia for looting shipments and refusing to let buses pass through the blockade. Moscow said Ukraine was to blame for failing to observe ceasefires. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister, Irina Vereshchuk, said 9 humanitarian corridors had been agreed for Friday to evacuate civilians, including by private car from Mariupol. Bodies have been buried in mass graves or makeshift graves in gardens. Mariupol Mayor Vadim Boychenko told the Associated Press that bodies were carpeted through the streets. Ukrainian authorities say tens of thousands of civilians have been in Mariupol. He said Russian forces had brought mobile cremation equipment to Mariupol to dispose of the corpses. Mobile crematoriums have arrived in the form of trucks. You open it, and there is a pipe inside and these bodies are burned, Mr. Boychenko said. International organizations such as the Red Cross and the United Nations say they believe thousands have, but the extent of suffering cannot be assessed yet because the city has been cut off. Accusations of war crimes. Among the major incidents that drew international outcry was the of the Mariupol Maternity House and Children's Hospital on March 9, when wounded pregnant women were photographed being carried out of rubble. M to mute, left and right arrows to seek, up and down arrows for volume. Watch 2 minutes 13 seconds 2 minutes and 13 seconds soldiers evacuate people from a Ukrainian hospital hit in an airstrike. Several people and at least 17 others, including women in labor, were injured. A children's hospital. A maternity hospital. How did they threaten the Russian Federation? Mr. Zelensky said in an address last month. The targeting of a Mariupol children's hospital drew international condemnation. Ukrainian blogger Mariana Vishygiskaya gave birth to a girl the day after the airstrike. We were laying in wards when glasses, frames, windows and walls flew apart, Ms. Vishygiskaya said at the time. We don't know how it happened. We were in our wards and some had time to cover themselves, some didn't. A week later, Mariupol's drama theatre was destroyed during an attack in which local Ukrainian officials said roughly 300 people were. The city was home to 400,000 people before the war. The word children had been spelled out on the street in front of the building, visible from space. The theatre was among 20 cultural sites verified by UNESCO to have been damaged by fighting in Mariupol and the surrounding Donetsk region. M to mute, left and right arrows to seek, up and down arrows for volume. Watch 56 seconds 56s footage from inside of destroyed Mariupol drama theatre. Russia denies targeting civilians in Mariupol and has claimed, without presenting evidence, that incidents including the theatering and maternity hospital attack were staged. The Ukrainian government and its Western allies dismiss this as a smear to deflect blame. A mission of experts set up by Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe nations this week said it had found evidence of war crimes and crimes against humanity by Russia in Ukraine. The city has been cut off from aid. Russia's mission to the OSCE said on Twitter the report is based solely on unfounded propaganda theses, contains references to dubious sources and logical stretches in the style of highly likely. Despite Russian denials, the report said the maternity hospital attack was carried out by Russia and those responsible had committed a war crime. It also said the strike on the theatre, which hundreds of civilians, was a war crime. The mission also found what it called violations by Ukraine, particularly in its treatment of prisoners of war, but it said Russia's violations are by far larger in nature and scale. Moscow denies targeting civilians in Ukraine. Taken as a whole, The report documents the catalogue of inhumanity perpetrated by Russia's forces in Ukraine. U.S. Ambassador to the OSCE